They took her in for impersonating a SEAL until an Admiral whispered, "That tattoo's real." "You arrested her?" the Marine officer barked, his voice cutting through the cemetery like a rifle crack. The two patrol officers froze, hands still gripping the wrists of the weary, mud-streaked woman they just pulled from the graveside. One officer looked toward the man now approaching, ribbons glinting in the sun, white cap pristine, the red trim of his dress blues nearly glowing with authority. The woman didn't speak. She didn't resist. Her eyes were locked on a nearby grave, a small one, freshly dug, the white headstone unmarked by time or moss. Her lips moved silently, mouthing a name only she knew. "She was impersonating a Navy SEAL," one cop muttered. "Loitering. No ID. Said she had clearance. But, look at her." The Marine's gaze lowered, his jaw tightening. "She's not just a SEAL," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "She's a ghost." The woman looked like she'd crawled through war itself, stringy hair damp with sweat and dirt, face bruised and hollowed by time. Her hoodie sagged on her frame, stained and torn, but on her chest, half concealed, was the faded insignia of a once proud command. The officer didn't recognize it, but the Marine did. He couldn't stop staring at the faint ink on the inside of her wrist. It was old, half faded, a trident. The SEAL trident, not the commercial kind stitched onto hats sold to tourists. This was embedded in scar tissue, the real kind, the kind you earn in blood. "Ma'am," the Marine said softly, stepping closer, "please tell me you're who I think you are." Still, she said nothing. Her silence was its own kind of salute. Her name was Rebecca Beck Holloway, though she hadn't used it in over 5 years. Beck grew up in an Oklahoma farmhouse surrounded by silence. Her father was a Vietnam vet who spoke with his eyes more than words. Her brother enlisted when she was 12. By the time she was 17, he'd been buried under a flag. That funeral shaped her. It sharpened her. She enlisted young, fought harder, trained longer, and survived what others couldn't. She wasn't supposed to be allowed into the teams, but unofficially, she was recruited into a Black Ops unit so classified it didn't have a name, only a symbol. POAS, Project, Phantom of a Shadow. They called her the Shadow Queen, a title never spoken outside war zones. She didn't exist on paper. Her missions never made it into Pentagon briefings. She dismantled traffickers in Libya, led recoveries in Mogadishu, disappeared into North Korea, and came back with intel that averted a global catastrophe. Each success took pieces from her. Her body bore more than tattoos. It bore stories no one would believe. She retired forcibly after a final mission went dark. 3 men died. She survived. She blamed herself. And since then, she lived like a ghost. No pension, no medals. Just silence, and a name whispered by those who still owed her their lives. The patrolmen didn't care about ghosts. They saw a tired woman kneeling at a grave too long. A public disturbance. One of them said, "She looked unstable." The other muttered, "Stolen valor." The cemetery was sacred ground, and they believed she had no right to be there. Around them, visitors watched in uneasy silence as the scene unfolded. Some lowered their eyes, unwilling to challenge authority. Others whispered, unsure if this woman was just another soul lost in grief or something more. She hadn't spoken a word. Not when they ordered her to stand. Not when they cuffed her wrists. Not even when one officer kicked over the small bouquet she'd laid by the headstone. The Marine watched that moment carefully. Her reaction had been almost imperceptible, a flicker in her jaw. But she hadn't moved. She didn't speak, because silence was her weapon. As the officers began to lead her away, the Marine stepped forward, commanding and still. What did she do exactly? She claimed she was a SEAL, one cop replied, now more defensive. Said she had clearance, but her name's not in any active database. And look at her, she doesn't belong here. The Marine reached into his coat, retrieved a worn leather badge wallet, and held it open long enough for them to see the embedded insignia. Brigadier Admiral John A. Renner, Special Warfare. Then, softly, so only they could hear, he said, "That tattoo's real, She doesn't show up in your system because she was buried by it. They stared, uncertain. He stepped toward the woman, gently lifting the sleeve of her hoodie. The seal trident glinted faintly beneath old scars. You boys just put cuffs on a legend, he said. One of the cops reached for the cuffs, suddenly unsure. We didn't know. That's the problem, Admiral Renner said, voice hardening. You don't ask. You assume. He turned to the crowd that had quietly gathered. Veterans, visitors, a Gold Star mother who now stepped forward, tears welling. I saw her once, she whispered. She came to my son's funeral. She stood in the back, just like today. Didn't speak, but she saluted when they lowered the flag. Another man, a double amputee in a wheelchair, raised a trembling hand. She pulled me out of a collapsed building in Helmand. No one else came. I never even knew her name. The crowd thickened, now memory becoming testimony. One by one, the silence broke. People remembered her, not by name, but by grace, by presence, by the silence that always arrived with dignity. The cuffs were removed. But Beck didn't move. She simply walked back to the grave, kneeling once more, placing the flowers upright again, a ritual she'd done every year for a man whose name she never revealed, a comrade, a ghost like her. The crowd stood in silence. A ripple of salutes rose, in sequence veterans, civilians, even children who didn't understand but felt something sacred pass between the rows of white stone. The officers stood back, humbled and silent. And the Admiral knelt beside her. They told me you were gone, he said quietly. But legends never die, do they? She smiled faintly, a tired, worn smile. I promised him I'd come every year, until I couldn't. Then let us come with you, he said. You shouldn't kneel alone. And so, she didn't. In a world quick to judge by appearance, quick to forget the silent ones who gave everything, let this story remind us. Some warriors walk among us, invisible and weary, carrying more than we'll ever understand. They don't demand recognition. They don't need a stage. They kneel beside graves when no one's watching. Their silence isn't weakness, it's strength loud enough for eternity. If this story moved you, share it. Comment where you're watching from, and if you've ever met someone whose quiet presence said more than words ever could. Subscribe for more stories that honor the invisible giants who walk beside us every day. Because some heroes aren't made of headlines. They're made of silence and steel.